Okay, so in this video, we're going to do a couple more things, but this is still basically how the calendar is going to look. At the end here, all the values inside are still going to be all ones because there's no point in going through and building something like this automatically. It's just not worth it, especially later when we're doing it automatically with JavaScript. So let's just wait for that. For now, there's still a couple more things we got to do. I like to style things first. So this day here should be styled. Also the notes. I'm going to put a note on the calendar right here, just on any day. So there's going to be a note there. And when you hover over it, it's going to show you what the tooltip will look like. So right here, like for example, let's go here. So the tooltip, we're going to be creating that as well. Just because I like building things first and then using those things after. So once we already have the styles for the images and the tooltip and the current day, later on when we're building the calendar, all we have to do is put down an image on the calendar, append it to the table cell, and it will automatically look how you want it to look. Okay, first we need the images. So I got them all here prepared. So these are the 5 different notes. They look pretty cool. Okay, whatever. Just 5. Let's put them in the project. Then put them in the images. Okay. Okay, so here. Well, there's one thing I want to do first before I get to the images. So we have the images there. There they are. But first, I want to do something a bit more simpler. Right here. And give it an ID of current day. Then we could style it. I think also at the end of this video, I will be putting all this stuff into CSS files because it shouldn't really just all stay here. It's getting pretty crowded now. Okay, so what did I copy last? Nothing. Okay, cool. Calendar, and then current day. Let's copy this calendar again. I might be needing it a bit more before this video is finished. So current day. It's gonna be a very easy one. Just background color to, I think I got E1, E1, E1. So pretty simple color, just E1, 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 and there it is. So that looks right. So we could actually take this out now. And then when we're building the calendar, all we have to do is put a current day ID on the calendar. And whenever that's put there, it will automatically look how you want it to look. However, I think for now, probably makes more sense to keep it. So I'll put it on another one. So yeah. Okay, now the images. This is a little bit different. First you want to go img, make a tag. I'm not going to be using the alt now. I will be when I'm actually putting the post-it notes on, but since this is just an example, you don't need that to be there. The alt tags, by the way, they're good for screen reading software for visually impaired. You can listen to a website through a screen reading software, and when it gets to an image, it'll just read to you what's in the alt tag, attribute. Also, for web pages that are taking too long to load, it will, before the image is loaded, it'll use the alt attribute. And also, if it can't find the image, like if you don't put the proper source, it will fall back to whatever the alt tag is. So I'm just going to show you an example of that. Why not? I'll say derp. First, I will say post1.png. I think that's right. No, it's note1. So this should find the note properly. Okay, so that's looking good. Not really, but okay. Okay, now if I spell it wrong, if I say that, see, it says derp instead. So that's what the alt tag is for. Don't worry about it too much. So now you want to go up here to the styles and just say img I could just easily select the IMG here without a class or anything, because unless you're having more images in the calendar, which here I'm not going to have, but if you wanted to, you might not want all the images to have the same style. But in this app, all the images are just going to be these, the notes. The icons are obviously not in the app itself. It's not on the markup. It's just the icon. So since those are the only images, you could easily just select by image and say width 3.8, view width, and okay, let's see what that looks like. So it looks a little bit better, except you notice it really messes up this, which is a problem. So let's see, let's make vertical align top. Okay, that looks pretty good. There's just one thing about it. Well, let's check this out here. So this is 90 by 89. This is also 90 by 89. So these little cells aren't perfectly square here, but they try to be, which is the point. So 1 pixel off, you're not really going to notice it. I'm not really sure why it's like that, because both values should end up being the same. It should be both calculated the same based on the CSS, but maybe it can't do that and still fit in the rest of the web page pixel perfect, so maybe it needs to add some here and there. I'm not really sure exactly why, but it doesn't matter. The point that I wanted to make is that this cell right here with the note in it is the same size as the other ones. And it is. So you don't want the image to make the cell bigger or anything like that. So that's looking pretty good. And then one more thing that I want to do, I'm going to try to explain what I'm going to do, is that I want the note to, like I said, not make the cell bigger, but from where it is, I want it to be pushed down a little bit so it looks more in the center. Right now it looks too high up on the calendar. I mean on the cell. You know what I mean, right? It looks like it's too close to the top. It should be pushed down a little bit so it looks more like it's in the center of the cell. And you could easily do that by setting the position relative. So this ain't gonna do anything. But now you could sort of push it around a little bit with top. So top 0.5 view width. So what the top would do, it would just push it a little bit. So it's like saying, stay where you are right now, but go down a couple pixels. And I always felt that these were a little bit counterintuitive because top looks like you're pushing it to the top, but it's basically like the opposite. If you want to push it down, you have to give top. If you want to push it up, you would put bottom. And there's also left and right. So you could say left. I'm not going to be using left, but you could do it. Let's just see what it looks like without it for now. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. And then you can put the left on it. I'm going to delete this after, but you can just see. So it's going to actually push it closer to over here. Yeah, see what that does? So it gives a lot of control over if you want to push things up. Okay, so there's still one more thing I want to do, and that is the tooltips. And the tooltips will actually be going up here in the main styles because they're more of just a general thing. Tooltip, even though they kind of are specific to the calendar, they don't need to be, so it's possible that you might want to have a tooltip somewhere else. So let's just say tooltip in a span is none. So let's look here and see what this is going to be doing. Let's close all of this. Okay, so down here, this is where you want a tooltip. So you're going to want to put a span. Now, I only put those spaces so I can make the span properly. I don't actually want the spaces, so this is a pretty good note. Let's see this. So it's just going to say it, and I didn't write pretty right. So you already know this, but it's just going to write it there. That's because this selector here is saying all spans, or rather all tooltips that have spans inside them. So in that case, you want to put a tooltip here. Class tooltip. So now it's gone. Okay, so now back up here. So dot tooltip. Hover. So this right now, this isn't selecting the span. It's rather selecting the tooltip itself. So in this case, when you hover over the TD that has a note on it, not the note itself, or not the span itself, but when you hover over the TD that has the tooltip, basically. You want to change the cursor to help and position relative. So you see that it's changing the cursor. Okay. Now you want to say on tooltip hover. So tooltips that are being hovered over, spans inside them. Now there's a bit going on here. So first thing, I think the first thing that should be here is display block. So this will just make it not hiding anymore. So yeah, you don't want that to happen. Let's say padding. Six pixels. Now this one is a little bit weirder. There's this one, it's very specific while I'm using it. I'm not sure if, well, I actually can't explain what's happening here, but I'll explain it after. So white space. Now I want to set the width of it to 12 view width. Display, oh, I already have the display. Then Z index 100. Background color. This one's easy, ED. And the color of the text, I put it black. Border radius 6 pixels. Left to view width. Top 4 view width. And then finally, the position should be absolute. Okay, so I don't really like this animation here. I think that's happening because I forgot to specify the font size to be 1 view width. It's probably also a little bit too big. Yeah, okay, so that's pretty much it. Okay, so now I'm going to try to describe what I'm using this pre-wrap for. So let's see if I just not use this. I don't know if it'll be completely apparent what that's going to do right now. Okay, it's not. Okay, but if you come over here and look at this note, I don't know if I could really show you exactly how it changes because I would have to change this app and I don't have that open right now. But basically, what I wanted to happen was if I put a note down here, then a note right here, I wanted the app to get these spaces right because I didn't want it just to make all these spaces, because most of the time in HTML, when you just do some line breaks like that, it'll just go back to this. Basically, it'll just hold one space every time. So if you did this, you can see it remembers all that space. HTML usually doesn't do that. It would count all this space as just one space. And I guess most of the time that's pretty good, because if you look at the way HTML is indented, if like you had a paragraph and then, you know, an extra 2 lines or something, you wouldn't want those 2 lines or all of your indentation to count for spaces. So that's probably a good thing. But there's times when you want the spaces to remember. And for that, you would use a pre-tag. Or you could not use a pre-tag and just use the, what's it called? White space. Okay, it's called white space, and you would set it to pre. So if you set it to pre, then what would happen is, so I don't know why I just changed it there, and I'm going to show you here. But in this case, the white space would be remembered, like it is now. But there's a difference between pre and pre-wrap. If you set it just to pre, you did something like this, then right now, since this app is pre-wrap, it's basically starting on new lines when it needs to. If I set this one to just pre, then in an example like this, it would look right. They would look basically the same. That's because in this one, there's no wrapping. There's no wrapping that's happening. All this stuff isn't long enough to start on a new line. But this one is, so it does. But if I changed it from pre-wrap to just pre, all this text would just stay on one line. And it would also not make the container bigger, it would just leave the container. So that's what this pre-wrap is doing. It's allowing you to start your text here on new lines, like that. And it's also making it so when you write long sentences that it won't just, you know, it won't just continue all on one line. So that's exactly what this is doing. I could probably show you a better example later when we actually start using this text area to make notes. Anyways, just in case you were wondering, I wanted to explain this white space property. Okay, so I think that's it for this video, and it's probably it for this section. I don't think there's any more to do here. We have the current day, we have the calendars. Obviously these buttons aren't really working yet, but everything else is looking pretty good. Okay, so I'll see you in the next section.